Hey, how's it going? Today I want to just sort of talk about sort of ooh, I already said that, didn't I? I want to talk about reflecting on stuff. So I guess I want to talk about reflection. And particularly I wanted to talk about the way we are doing it right now in well, now things are sort of loosening up and opening up. I was going to say in this time of lockdown and isolation, but I I think we may be premature in going out and trying to start up the world again. It's like we are not letting the process finish to the point where it's safe to go out. Like every time we start letting people out, there's another outbreak. And it's because, I don't even want to talk about that. But what I do want to talk about in relation to that is that we've had everything slow down quite a bit. And for a lot of us, a lot of financial difficulties and uh, 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 ways of making your living difficulties and just, illness, hospitalization, and healthcare difficulties. But it has slowed down. Um, And even though things have been gradually speeding up from where they were a year ago when we slowed down and nature got better and the air got better and all that stuff, we're still kind of, I think, have moved out of the state of mind we were in prior to the pandemic into one where we're in it. And we're just in it, like we can keep trying to end it, but it's not ready to end because we haven't learned the lesson of it. I don't think there's been a lot of speculation that it's almost like this pandemic is happening to teach us a lesson or some variation on that theme. And if so many of us are coming to that conclusion, there's got to be a little something to it. I happen to think it was completely a co-creation and arrangement by all beings of this world, because as we're seeing now, we have two shootings, mass shootings this week, two in 1 week within days of each other. And we're all just acting out, like every every bad inclination is coming to the surface. But also mixed in there is a lot of incision of social uh, things we used to do, socializing. So I think in there somewhere, if you're not like in a position like me, for example, where I was kind of already living the isolation life due to some health challenges, so it hasn't really been that different for me or difficult either, because like I said, I was already kind of living this way. However, I do miss being able to go out and about freely, which was not like I had a huge social calendar. It usually was like shopping here and there, but being able to go out and get in the car, like I feel like a dog when I have a doctor's appointment, like, ooh, I get to go in the car, I get to go for a ride in the car. That's not good. It shouldn't be that much of a treat to go for a ride in the dang car. Also, I mean, yeah, it's really. I don't want to get personal. I don't want to get any more personal. I guess I was about to, but anyway, what I was trying to get at though is that you could still be working, maybe working a lot, like several jobs, or you could be working at home with your kids there, or you know, just like it seems like a lot of people's situations are just very different. Like maybe they were evicted from their home, and that's a big difference. Like maybe they still have a job. I don't know. there's a lot of different situations out there, but the point that I keep trying to get to, that I keep digressing away from, is I think we've all had plenty of things to reflect upon, and if we're lucky, some time to do it and deeply. And I say that, um, I add that extra part because, as I said, I've lived this way, like home quite a bit, not going out very much, really just sort of keeping to myself, doing things to entertain myself here at home or, like outside in the little neighborhood, like not, I mean, like going for a roll in my chair, like that was a big deal. I could still do that, if it weren't for, like I said, I have some physical challenges, and so that's made it kind of really hard to do that. But even before all of this, I was living this way, and I had lamented when I realized I was having a Kundalini awakening in about 2015, 16. That is still ongoing, by the way. Like, I don't think it's just like a burst and then it ends. I think that it's a lifetime ongoing process that you may or may not gradually at some point become aware of this thing happening to you, and it has peaks and plateaus just like a lot of other areas in our lives. And so I was lamenting like 2 years ago that, my God, I've had all this time to sit here and reflect, which I have done, but I haven't taken full advantage of it. Like, I haven't written a book, I haven't painted a bunch of painting. I can't paint, but I'm just saying, like, I haven't gotten really anything productive out of it. And by productive, I mean that nothing marketable. Like, I'm not making any money off of sitting here being sort of homebound. But I have plenty of time to think. And what I realized the other day was I wasn't thinking very deeply. Like, I think I'm a pretty critical thinker on a lot of levels, but sometimes I'm just like, duh. Like, I'll give you an example. This is what I discovered while reflecting deeply. Now, I'm going to relate a story from my past where I lived with, I lived with four other people in a one-bedroom apartment. And I lived in Hollywood in a white neighborhood. I mean, there was a speckle of black people here and there, like myself, but not a lot. And so all of my roommates were white. And mostly everybody I went to school with was as well. But one day I came home and I basically liked all of these people. I had like a total social group. I was in a band. My roommate was in my band. And then he was not in my band. He was in another band that I was friends with. And then he was from Idaho. And then a friend of his from Idaho also lived in Hollywood. And he had a band. And I liked his band. And I played with everybody's bands with my band. So it was like a whole little nest of a society. And I came home from work in retail at a time that was particularly difficult because there was a sort of a lie told about me at work because I decided that I was going to stop being in this coworker's band. And she did not take it well and told our bosses that I did some things that I absolutely didn't do. And then, it was easy to prove because had I done them, the customer would have totally complained. And I was like, we have her credit card receipt. Please call this woman and ask her if I did these things, because has she complained? No, she hasn't. And I'm telling you, I didn't do it. But I'm telling you what happened prior to this, dreamed up incident. So even though there was no proof, I got my full-time 5 days cut to 3. And that was a hardship, even though, I was in a roommate situation. This was California, LA, and I had a car and insurance. So, I was never not, sort of broke, basically. So that really kind of screwed me there. And I had a bad day or just a long, hard day, Like retail clerking is hard. And I didn't want to be doing that. I deeply dislike dealing with people on that level where you become, the servant and you have to do it because the customer's always right, even if they're totally wrong. And I would get in trouble for not talking back, not having an attitude, not having tone. I would get in trouble for having an expression on my face. If that's all they got out, well, my bosses knew that was quite like the accomplishment, if that was all that I had to say. But I still got in trouble for it. So that was the kind of atmosphere, even though it was a great place to work and two out of three bosses were friends and one of them was in my band. It was all of like a very incestuous kind of situation there. But I came home from work and I had run out of cigarettes and I really wanted one, and I had to come all the way home to get money that I had there and to then go back out and get cigarettes. But when I walked in the door, there was a bunch of people in my house and not all of them lived there. And I said, "Hey, does anyone have a cigarette?" Well, in retrospect, I realized when I came in, like they knew I'd be coming. And when I came in the room and asked for the cigarette, like all the conversation stopped. And if I hadn't been so, like, determined to get work out of my hair, I probably would have noticed that and realized, like, oh, something's up. But I didn't. And this particular guy, who I actually really liked and thought was my friend at the time, offered me one of his cigarettes. And not like I hadn't given this guy like a gazillion cigarettes back. It wasn't like that kind of situation. So he gives me the cigarette and everybody's just sitting there quiet. So I light it up and then they gradually start talking again and I'm smoking. And I take the second puff and the friggin' thing blows up like a cartoon. The ends curled back all black, and it was like, oh, haha, you really got me. And, I was like, okay, cut the end off it and smoke the rest of the cigarette, and then I went to the store. And so I thought, whatever, these guys play jokes on each other like this all the time. Like, I didn't really take it personal. But then later on, a little while later, this same guy, I had a music book. It was a Rolling Stones complete book, which meant it had pictures and lyrics and sheet music in it. And it was an original from the 60s, and it was not mine. It was loaned to me. So I lent it to this guy, and he's a guitar player in one of these people's bands that I mentioned before. Excuse me. And he took it home, and then I asked for it back because I was ready to return it. In fact, I had been about to return it when he saw it at my house and asked to borrow it. So I let him borrow it for like 3 or 4 days, and I asked for it back, and he was like, no. He's just like, no, I'm not going to give it back to you. I'm like, why not? And he's like, because I'm keeping it. I'm like, well, it's not mine. You need to give it back. It's a loan. He's like, I don't care. I'm keeping it. And then it was like, oh, now so many other things with this guy make sense. He doesn't like me. Okay. I just kind of was like, because it's happened so many times, you can't like worry about every single incident of that or you will lose your freaking mind. So I just kind of was like, okay, noted, and just kind of moved on. And that was just something that stood out when this other thing happened, when I had this sort of revelation when I was reflecting on that. And it was that one time, this other guy that was in a band, but he didn't live at my house. He is a friend, and he actually does like me. He's a good friend. And this one day, we went to this awesome place that was right up the street from my old high school, and well, one of my old high schools, called Mr. Pizza, Damiano's Mr. Pizza. And this was back in like 80 something, so they were like, I don't know, 81, 82, somewhere like that. I think the location of that place has since moved, but I wouldn't know because I haven't lived in LA in, boy, like 20, 30 years now. Anyway, this person and I, this friend, went to this pizza place, and he's a vegetarian, so we got just garlic pizza, cheese, garlic pizza. And so they really, like, they don't mess around. You know how they cover the cheese all the way to the crust, and every inch of the, before the crust is also covered with garlic. So, I mean, do you understand what I'm saying here? It was an intense garlic experience, but I just knew, like, yum, it was good, and, like, yes, I will have garlic breath until the next day. Well, here's what happened. The next day, after I got home from work, my friend called when he got home from work, and he said, "Hey, that garlic pizza, everybody was telling me I reeked of garlic all day. I was sweating garlic." I mean, I guess it was pretty extreme. And I said, "Oh, ha 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 ha, that's funny." And, like, didn't connect that I probably would be smelling that way too. And this is a digression of sorts. Years later, when I lived in San Francisco, I went to the Stinking Rose, which is a garlic restaurant, and everything you eat there is packed with garlic. So the next day after I'd gone there, my roommate and I went to the video store, and I was leaning on the counter talking to the clerk. And she comes marching over and she says, "Hey, get out of his face. You totally reek of garlic. Don't you know that? What's wrong with you?" And it was like, no, I had no freaking clue. Thanks. And the guy. Whoa. Oh. Hi. I'm glad I didn't stop. I guess I spazzed out and dropped it. Anyway, the clerk, we really were about 4 inches from face to face. But the beautiful thing about San Francisco is there's a bunch of vegetarians that live there and vegans. So I don't question that I reeked of garlic. I was just surprised that I didn't even know. And then I was even more surprised that this guy didn't seem to give a shit. And then even after she said it, he was just like, it's fine. But like I said, I was reflecting on these things, and it occurred to me that, like, wow, those people that I spent so much time with, drank so much beer with, and did so much drugs with, had so many conversations with, like, thought I was just having regular friendships. It occurred to me, like, day before yesterday, that these people did not in fact like me and were not in fact my friends at all. And some of them it was fairly obvious. One was a female that just showed over and over, like, I don't know, some kind of psychosis. I'll be nice to you, then I'll do some totally fucked up bitch thing to you, and, like, messed up things, like hitting on some guy she totally knew I was into, and then, like, getting him all into her and then dumping him. Like, what, you just did that? Why? Like, it was messed up to him, it was messed up to me, and and then the guy with the exploding cigarette and stealing the book. But then when I realized I must have, after I ate the pizza, when I lived with those people, I must have reeked too. No one said anything to me. Not at home, not in my band practice, not at a show, not at work. So I'm thinking, if my lunch partner, mate, whatever, friend, when we had the pizza was smelling bad, there's no way not smelling bad, but smelling strongly of garlic. If he was, I had to be too, And no one said anything. Like, did I run around with, like, stuff stuck to my teeth and boogers and eye crud and just, weird shit in my hair and just all of these totally fake friends? Like, ha, joke's on you, you stink. So I can't imagine if they let me run around stinking and didn't even, give me a heads up. They're sure not going to tell me about anything else. And the exploding cigarette, well, they all were sitting there. They obviously knew it was going to happen, and they knew it was going to happen to me because he hands me the pack and then had one pushed up out for me to grab. And I'm such a sucker. See, that's the thing. Like I said, I did notice some things, of course, over the years. I'm not like completely clueless, but my inclination is to not immediately think the worst of people. Like, I kind of need you to, like, really fuck up and fuck with me for me to just, be so suspect of you and angry at you. And I don't want to meet people and have an immediate chip on my shoulder. Like, I want to give you the chance to be awesome because that's how I'm going to come at you. Like, I'm not going to even come at you. I'm just going to be this person that I am, that I always consistently am. And if I got a problem with you, I'm either not going to deal with you at all or just you're gonna know I'm not into you, like there's not gonna be engagements. Like, I'm not gonna not like someone and hang out with them and act like I'm their friend. Like, I don't do that. That's fake and it feels horrible when someone does it to you, and it feels horrible, in my opinion, to do it to other people. So that was just a revelation, and I wouldn't have really gone public with it except for it ties into something else that affects a lot more people, and that would be racism. And even though there's like all this BLM stuff, like from the positive to the negative end of the spectrum, and there's a lot going on there. This new spate of Asian violence, spike, I should say, because it gets reiterated over and over. They've been here as long as black people, and they've been suffering from racism just as long. And it's really horrible right now because at least in the past, like they gathered up the Japanese in World War II and put them in a camp, and the Chinese were treated like, pardon me, black slaves when they were here building the railroad tracks or just first coming to this country, like the greatest country in the world, treats you like shit once you get here. Uh-oh, pardon me. Anyway, excuse me. The thing about it is, when you're a person who, whether it's racial or for some other reason, you're marginalized and you're a minority, and so you're less than, you're poor, you are a druggie, or you have a lot of kids and by multiple partners, and just like all kinds of negative stuff. Or you're gonna be in a store and you're gonna steal. It's like sometimes people just want to go to the store and buy stuff. Maybe they're not all thieves just because they're black. Like, even if you're a black thief, sometime you're gonna go to the store and buy stuff. And yet, you'll get followed around and just, I'll tell you, people just think they can walk up to you and say whatever little tidbit of formerly subdued thoughts on the black person across from you. Even if you've never met them before, it doesn't matter. You're interchangeable because they're not noting like what you look like or how dark you are or how, what you sound like when you speak. Like if you sound like you're from the South, or you sound like Snoop Dogg, or whatever it is. Like people, like, it's just like when you're some sort of minority, people think they can just come up to you and say anything, like I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to think of because I'm never going to come up and say some stupid shit like that to somebody, but something along the lines of, you people are always blah, blah, blah. Or, okay, I'm going to be honest here. I haven't experienced it that much, but I have had people just come up and say weird racial shit to me that's like they've been holding it in forever. Like, I don't save it and keep it. I don't want to. I want to move past that we even have to do that to each other. So I don't really want to remember those things, but they're just stupid slights, and it's like usually from a stranger that you had no prior interaction with will just walk up and make some statement to you, or you're in some sort of appointment and someone you don't know will lean in and you think they're telling you something important about like maybe your job interview or whatever the thing is, and they'll say some idiot like thing that they think about all black people that's in my case has had me going, what are you even talking about? I've never lived on a farm, or it's just like some weird thing they have in their mind, and then they see you, the convenient black person, to attach it to. Like, they may not, from what I can tell, have ever had any experience of the kind that they're like talking about, afraid you're gonna say or do or act. It's just like, okay, here's one. I had this girlfriend when I still lived in Hollywood, friend, and she was having Thanksgiving, and she invited me over, and I was like excited because she was excited. She was gonna cook for the first time, and she was gonna have all of her friends there, and she worked for a modeling agency. So, like a pharmacist, they think they are better than you. They think they know more than you. They look down on you. And it's not just black people. It's just like everyone. It's just this weird superior thing. Like, I gotta show you that I'm better than you. And that was sort of the feeling I got from the people from her work. And also, she could then talk to them about you, and you have no idea what was said or even that anything was said. But I did, I learned that day that that was the case. So I get there, and her apartment was on the roof of this building, so you could actually go out onto the roof. And so I was just sort of outside smoking a cigarette, and hadn't been there that long, hadn't really circulated or socialized much, just sort of met her friends, and a couple of them were snooty and like had that weird thing, like I was saying, that they talked about you but you didn't know them, nor they you, but they had some kind of weird tone or attitude toward you. But, and I didn't know really what it was about. I didn't even think about it that deeply because, like I said, it happens so much. You don't really look for the source. You no longer care when it happens so much. You just like, okay. So anyway, that was my deal. And I was speaking to one of her friends. We were not arguing or anything. I know I was excited about something, but I was in a good way, like just describing something that I was, like, I guess a little too passionate about or something. Next thing I know, this so-called friend comes dashing out of her house and starts to accuse me of acting some kind of way. Like, she didn't specify what it was, but she's like, you can't just come over here and start acting like that. And one of the people that she came out with was like standing by her and nodding and hand on the hip, acting like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. And I'm going, well, wait, what did I even do? And it just became like all of these people coming up to observe the yelling at, and for which I to this day don't know what was about, and like looking at me like I'd done something wrong. And I was like, okay, well, I've had enough of this party, and I pretty much left. And then the next day, she calls up and she's like, I'm sorry I was so rude to you. I was so worried about my party being good. And I was like, so I was the one ruining it? Why did you even invite me? Like, I didn't even ever talk to her again. Like, I just thought that was so messed up. Like, I was doing stuff to ruin her party just because I was there not doing anything but being black? Fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck off. So, like I said, it happens all the time. And sometimes it's extreme like that. And sometimes it's just somebody coming up to you saying some kind of weird little quirk they have against black people. And you've never even seen this person in your life. Like, you've had no impact on them. Like, how dare you? I don't blame you for all the white shit that happens to me just because you're some new white person I met. See, people are just nuts. And that is why I wish that we could all take advantage of this time to reflect on these things. Because, like, I'm not gonna. This is about as excited about it as I'm gonna get unless someone asks me, you know? Um, but my ultimate point here is that I did think about it. I thought about it on different levels over time. I've had, like I've been saying, deeper realizations of things, deeper cognizations of things over time. Like, as you age, you gain wisdom. It's a real thing. It's true. Not to be all high and mighty with the wisdom comment, but you learn stuff, you know, and it seems like after you learn a lesson on a number of different levels, a number of times, like, I don't know, that's pretty textured, that's pretty deep, that's wisdom, right? So I just wanted to share that this is a good time to take advantage of reflection and just kind of working through some things. And shoot, I did it again. Sorry about that, Butterfingers. Uh, but yeah, it's a good time to reflect and to just sort of think these things through. And the good thing is, um, well, it's safe. You know, it's safe to go ahead and think about it, especially if it's something old, like my thing was that I just talked about. Because, as like I was saying, it ends up being attached to so many other things along the way, like what happened in the past gets added onto, and what you learned from it gets added onto because just new details get added, you know, or new ways to see how the situation went down or how it worked out, how it played out. And that's all good, you know. It's good to have time to think without stress about things that happened that maybe bothered you for a long time or maybe didn't but held something that you need now back in that, you know, incident that you remember. I don't know, for me it's fulfilling to make these revelations and to make sense of these things about myself. And I don't know what better time to do it when you have a bunch of than when you have a bunch of free time. So I don't I don't have like a meaning of what I said, and not even as far as it has to do with the racial stuff. I just wanted to talk about it. I think that it's like that Maya Angelou quote where she said, when you meet someone for the first time, or when someone shows you themselves, believe them. Well, yes, totally. And so, like me, you may not notice right away what's happening, like what the situation actually is, you know. But what I get from it is that I learn about myself. I learn how to be okay with things that happen, and especially when it comes to the racial stuff, because a lot of times that's all you can do is your best to understand what happened. You can't really impact other people until kind of they're ready to let it happen to them. It's like that saying, seeing is believing. Well, have you ever thought about that? Like, something doesn't exist until you see it? Really? Is that how the world works? I don't think so. There's a companion saying to that, and it's believing is seeing. Well, let's think about that for a second. If you can't see something until you believe it, then why should you be able to believe it until you can see it? Okay, so what if I'm talking about a dragon? Well, when I say believe it when you can see it, I mean in your head. Like, you have to be able to conceive of this thing actually existing for you to see it. You have to believe that the thing exists before it becomes visible to you in reality. It's the opposite of seeing is believing, but I think it's the truer statement. And so, you can't make somebody see things. Although, I mean, I think it's possible to help them. I think, like, I'm so glad that I heard some other kids, or not other kids, I'm not a kid anymore. I heard some kids talking about this the other day, well, on television, but I'm glad that it's still a thing that happens. That when you're a kid, you have the opportunity to go to school with people of different races if you're lucky and don't go to some sort of segregated place. And if you are even more fortunate, you will have sleepovers with these people, or at the very least, you'll have a situation like I had at one of my elementary schools, which was that we'd have a potluck each month for my class. And I went to school at this place. There was my family, there were Japanese, there were Germans, there were Scandinavians, there were Latinos. Um, Not really other blacks though. Like, I think one other family nearby that they had an older kid that was like out of the school, but he'd gone there. Uh, Koreans, for, like, there was a girl in that class actually that just didn't even speak English. She was like fresh off the boat, so to speak. And then there was like a boy from Ecuador that was like that. And I mean, it was amazing. It was like a United Nations of school. So we'd have this. Oh yeah, and we had like a Muslim kid and a Filipino kid. Where's the Muslim kid from? I can't remember. I want to say Morocco, but I don't think it was Morocco. Anyway, I'm just saying that we had like such a variety of people uh, to mingle with, to meet, to get to know a little bit. And in that situation, when you're breaking bread, you know, you're relaxed, you're comfortable, and when you have something that you've never had before from someone to whom it's totally normal, they can tell you about it and they can explain it, and then that makes it easy to move on to other stuff. You can ask a lot of questions, is what I'm saying. And excuse me, it opens doors to like friendship and also each other's minds, you know. Like, we've gotten away from like being able to let difference in, to even the curiosity to want to know like what's that about, instead of just like that's different, let's attack it. But oh god, that's such a human thing. I don't know what it is, let's shoot it first and then see what it does. Like, that's, if it speaks you can't ask it questions if you've shot it to death. That's the shooting thing is something for a whole other ramble. In any case, I pretty much, sorry about that, pretty much said what I wanted to say. Thank you and good night.